Hey everyone, Zaronce here. Long time no see, right? So today we're going to talk about Frost DK in Shadowlands Season 2 Battlegrounds. Alright, so not a lot has changed as far as the overall way that we're going to build our characters. It's a pretty smooth transition from Season 1 to what we're looking for in Season 2. Obviously there were some pretty major changes across the board for PvP going into this season, specifically all the changes with PvP talents and things like that. And so we'll take a look at that and how that changes how we set up. But first and foremost, we're just going to go over stats real quick. Right, so our stats are pretty much going to be the same as they were. Versatility and mastery are king. That's what we're looking for on every single piece. Obviously, full PvP gear, it's all going to be verse anyway, and so we're pretty much good to go there. Mastery is the next one we're looking for, and then haste and crit are much lower value, and it pretty much comes down to if you're building for a burst window, then you're going to go haste because of obliteration, which we'll get into later if you're not familiar with it. And if you're going for more sustained damage, then you're going to go for crit more. That being said, this is a burst meta. It's a burst season. It's a burst X pack. Everything is burst right now, and so you're going to want to go haste. I strongly recommend that you go haste over crit, but this is our third stat as far as priority is concerned, so let's not worry about that too much. It's pretty much going to be verse and mastery is what we're going for. And anything that you can't get mastery on, because everything's going to have verse, everything you can't get mastery on, you're going to go haste ideally, or crit if that is your style, but I would again strongly recommend haste. So between verse and mastery, there's pretty much two trains of thought here. You can either go for like a balanced or defensive build, which is going to favor verse, or you can go for a pure offense build, which is going to favor mastery. A lot of people now are curious about diminishing returns because those were introduced going into Shadowlands for secondary stats. So let me assure you that there is never going to be a situation this season where verse or mastery are going to lose value because of DR. They are still so powerful. They will always be your best two stats. If you are going pure offense, mastery is going to be your best stat for the entire season. If you are going pure balance, which I guess wouldn't be pure balance, if you're going for a balanced approach or a defensive approach, versatility is going to be your number one stat all season. DR is not going to affect that. DR will come into play, but not to a large enough degree that it's going to actually change anything. And haste and crit will maintain their same value at the bottom of the totem pole, regardless of DR. You will never get enough haste or crit for them to really even hit that DR, just because of the way that gear works for Shadowlands PvP gearing. Real quick, PvP gear is going to be the best in slot gear all season. You don't really have to raid or do Mythic Plus or anything like that. Domination shards are 50% nerf in PvP. So there may be like a couple pieces that would technically be best in slot, given, you know, stronger weights in verse or something like that, but you really don't need to do any of that. I really haven't been doing anything as far as that's concerned. As you can see, I still have a bunch of my 226 pieces from last season. I still have my 235 legendary. I'm not really worried about it. At the end of the day, gear really isn't going to make or break anything that you're doing, as long as you're playing the game mildly enough and, you know, getting your weekly vault at least one, and just continue to move along there. So let's go into the more interesting things, right? So we'll start with talents here. These are actually not my default talents. I would say I default the Spell Ward in there, but we'll get into that. Anyway, so first tier, Inexorable Assault, same as last season, nothing changes here. Cold Heart is nerfed in PvP, and you chains too much for it to really have any value as far as damage is concerned. It's not going to be meaningful. Icy Talons relies on uptime, and that's really hard to come by in a PvP situation. Inexorable Assault, on the other hand, stacks on top of your Obliterate, which is your main damage dealer in your burst windows, and so this just adds more damage there. You can get up to 10 or 11k of Blitz pretty consistently, I think, during your Pillar windows, because Pillar is unnerfed in PvP now, so you can get some really juicy Blitz during your Pillar windows, and Inexorable Assault can crit to 2 or 3k. So quick math, you can get almost 14, 15k Obliterate crits if you count Inexorable Assault as part of that Obliterate crit, which is pretty chunky considering that you're doing it every other global during your Pillar window. And then with Empowered Rune Weapon going at the same time, your globals are what, 1.2, 1.1 seconds, and so pretty much every 2 seconds or so you're hitting someone for 14k if you can get that Inexorable crit. Next row, Murderous Efficiency is your go-to just because, as we mentioned earlier, Obliteration, that's going to be our go-to on the last tier, which we'll get to, but pretty much relies on rotating kill machine procs, and so you just want to make sure that you always have enough runes to fully execute your Obliteration windows. Runic Attenuation causes a lot of runing power cap. This could be good if you were going for a dual wield build, but I wouldn't really suggest that, especially not right now. Maybe could have value for a more sustained meta, but we're not in that right now, and so I would kind of just ignore that. You're going to find yourself RP capping a ton if you take Runic Attenuation, and Murderous Efficiency is just going to help you maintain runes during your kill machine windows. You could potentially even pillar with one rune and lead with Frost Strike and then do your normal rotation and find that you have enough runes for your entire window, even just starting with one rune for pillar. So this is really great for when you really need like on-demand burst and you can't wait to refill runes for it, or just to have a steady and consistent pillar window. Horn of Winter, not really worth it. Would be better for, you know, maybe a breath build, but even then I'd rather have Runic Attenuation over that, so we'll just ignore that. Next row, Blinding Sleet, 100% of the time, always. The slow is great, the AoE aspect is great, and the synergy with Frostworm's Fury is great. So there's really nothing else to do here. Blinding Sleet, 100% of the time. It's even, like, you may think, like, oh, I don't need it because, you know, I'm not trying to set up Dragon Stuns like I would in Arena, but that's 100% false. Blinding Sleet and Dragon Stun are both so much more powerful in Battlegrounds than they are in Arena because there are so many more people that you can actually catch in the Disorient. And another thing is it doesn't instantly break on damage, at least not on frost damage, and so you can grip blind a whole team, and then you can pop Remorseless Winter, and then pop a Bomb Limb if you haven't already, and they'll still be set up there. So you can pop those two as setup globals and then hit them with the Dragon Stun, and they're right there for you. You know, a lot of times it won't break for that. Asphyxiate obviously has value and is useful, but compared to Blinding Sleet, it doesn't really synergize with our kit as well, which is more of that AoE oriented, cleave oriented build. Plus Dragon Stun is so important to what we're doing, and this just DRs with that, and so it's kind of like Plus now that we have Strangulate, which we'll get into later, it kind of reduces the value even further. Death's Reach is like not really that good unless you're doing like 40 mans and you're trying to get those super long grips, but this is more for like 10 or 15 man games. So next here, Avalanche is going to be your go-to because you get a lot of Rhyme Proc Howling Blast during your pillar window. This build is all about pillar windows, which is our kill window. It's a burst meta, and so we need to do everything we can to maximize our burst, and so Avalanche does that. It increases our burst window, it adds more juice to our pillar windows. It's got decent sustained outside of pillar. It's competitive with Frozen Pulse outside of pillar. Frozen Pulse would be more for a sustained build with dual wield. It doesn't really scale with two-handers as well as Avalanche does. So, you know, a dual wield build would be like Frozen Pulse and Runic Attenuation potentially. But that's not really a concern of ours right now because we have to build for burst. We don't have Ret bursts. We don't have Warrior burst and sustains. You know, we have to do everything we can to get our burst up to a level where we actually have kill pressure, because we are not the Rets or the Fire Mages of Shadowlands. So we have to do everything we can to get on the same level. Frostlight is a Mythic Plus talent. Good for padding, bad for kill pressure, which makes it bad for Shadowlands because you're not going to rot anyone down. You gotta burst. Next tier is Wraithwalk or Death Pact if you want mobility or if you want survivability. We are much tankier this season than we were last season, believe it or not. And for that reason, I've been running Wraithwalk a lot more. I would still run Death Pact if I were doing like random Battlegrounds and stuff, but for rated, I would run Wraithwalk. It's great for getting out of roots. Death Pact is tough to, if you do a lot of Arena on top of Battlegrounds, then I would stick with Wraithwalk, because Death Pact, the heal is affected by dampening, but the absorb is not, and so the longer those Arena games go on, the worse Death Pact becomes. But that's kind of beside the point. Permafrost is for a dampen meta, it's for a sustain meta. So it's pretty much Wraithwalk versus a survivability talent, and that survivability talent is sustain, dampen, or burst. And since we're in a burst, it's either Deathwalk or Death Pact or Wraithwalk. I kind of swap between the two. I would do Death Pact all the time for random BGs. and Wraithwalk for rated when you know that you're going to have heals that can actually keep you up. Next tier is Gathering Storm. This really doesn't change. It's just a passive damage increase to a lot of our cleave. Hypothermic is kind of a decent defensive option because of just being able to spam Death Strike or Death Coils to heal yourself. But again, we need more damage. We can't compete with a Ret or a Fire Mage with Burst. We need to help ourselves with that damage as much as possible, and it has synergy with the Conduit that we're going to run. It has synergy with our pillar windows because we use so many runes during those windows. We can get that damage to actually be decent sustained during those windows, decent addition to our damage during those windows, especially with how it combines with Obliteration and Murderous Efficiency with just feeding us runes. So it's not a huge damage increase, but it is nice. I mean, I should say Remorseless Winter is not a huge amount of damage, but it is a nice addition to our windows, and you will notice it. Glacial Advance is decent for if you want to run Fallen Crusader enchant and to add a little cleave, but it does add a little clunk to the rotation and a little more management to the rotation. It does synergize with Obliteration in the sense that it will give you your Killing Machine procs. You know, it'll add, see, you can see it adds Glacial Advance there, so it does have that kind of synergy to it. Not a huge deal, but it's got some clunk to it, and it doesn't synergize with our Conduits. If it's synergized with, for example, Unleash Frenzy, or especially Eradicate, if it's synergized with Eradicating Blow, it would be amazing. If it's synergized with Unleash Frenzy, it would be really good, but it doesn't. So unfortunately, it kind of loses value there. And for the last tier, it's Obliteration. This is what our whole build is based around. Hypothermic, or I'm sorry, Breath of Sintragosa could be good. It got unnerfed in PvP a little bit, or I should just say buffed a little bit in PvP. But again, this is more of a padding, sustained build, whereas we need this kill pressure really badly. Breath, I think if you were doing a dual wield build and you wanted to do something crazy like Breath, Frozen Pulse, Runic Continuation, all that stuff, like it could have value. I could see that. I would love to try it, but it's such a pain to gear and do all that stuff. Like, you know, I have to use all my conch to upgrade my gear for the Conquest gear this season, which means probably 3 months from now I might have enough Conquest to fully upgrade a couple one-handed weapons and actually try stuff out. But either way, we need that kill pressure. We need that upfront burst, and that's what Obliteration is. Breath of Sintragosa is sustained damage, sustained bursts, windows, longer burst windows, more easily interruptible. Ice Cap is just sustained damage. This is like a leveling talent. It's not really going to give you much kill pressure. You need that upfront burst, and that's what Obliteration provides. Next, PvP talents. Chill Streak was nerfed. Lovely. Lovely. Still really good. Still go-to. You're running BGs, you're always going to run Chill Streak. I'm going to skip Strangulate for a second because Spell Warden is my next always take talent. The reason I had Dome selected earlier is because I was doing arenas last night and I never swapped it out. But Spell Warden, this talent single-handedly makes us so much tankier than we were last expansion or last season. I love this talent. I didn't try it at first. I was running Bitter Chill instead, and I thought Bitter Chill was going to be really OP, and it's really not. It's good. It's not really OP. Spell Warden is so OP. It's so good. Always run this talent. It makes you so tanky. So many classes deal magic damage now, and this just absorbs all of it. Watch a Ret try to burst you down, and using your defensive properly and things like that, Spell Warden will just like totally laugh at them. It's a pain in the ass for any caster who's just trying to rot you or dot you. You know, any Shadow Priest increases their casting speed. It's a huge shield. It's really good. I always run this. Strangulate's the next one. Another new talent. Really good. Kind of loses value in Battlegrounds just because there's more healers. They're going to be further away. You're not always going to be able to consistently grip them in because your goes aren't going to be as reliant on getting the healer in the grip. And so Strangulate kind of loses value. Other things that are good would be Bitter Chill next. This is a good setup. I run this a lot on, say, Silver Shard, when a lot of your value as a Death Knight is just chainsing everyone. A lot of those maps where you're really there for speed control, like Silver Shard, where you try to stop people from going from cart to cart, that's when Bitter Chill really gains a lot of value because you're always going to have them chainsed anyway, and you can use Frost Strike to refresh your chains, which is a good way to save runes. Other good ones, Dome is always good. Death's Echo is an undervalued talent, but I wouldn't put it on the same tier as Bitter Chill or Dome. Delirium's another good one for speed control. If you're more concerned with just limiting, like this one would be great if the other team has a lot of mages, a lot of rogues, DHs, monks, things that rely on mobility cooldowns to get out of your chains and get away from you. So the combination of Delirium and then chain spam would be really good for those kind of comps. Shroud is decent, but Dead of Winter has potential to follow up stun with your Dragon Stun, but it's kind of a big damage loss because a lot of your build now is Remorseless Winter cleaved and just passive cleave. You know, we have Gathering Storm. We're going to get into the Conduit later, which is going to be Everfrost is going to be one of our better potency conduits. And so Dead of Winter kind of nullifies a lot of that. But so this is my standard setup. This is my go-to setup. You know, you do a Bomb Limb, Grip, Dragon Stun, and then you strangulate a healer coming out of the Dragon Stun, and it's a ton of pressure. Especially if your team has CC to follow up to their other healers or things like that. Strangulate is really good for stopping CC, stopping burst as well from DPS. So just a good all-around talent. And again, you can go Bitter Chill or Dome if you want more utility, more passive utility, or more defensive, and then Delirium as well for speed control. But we have a lot of good options. I would always run Chill Streak for the damage. It's a lot of damage still, even with the nerfs. I would always run Spell Warden for the tankiness. It's amazing. It's beautiful. I love it. It single-handedly makes us so much tankier. And then this is the one I would swap around. Either Strangulate, Bitter Chill, Dome, even Delirium. I really wish they would have taken this opportunity to make Dark Sim baseline. It really deserves to be baseline, but unfortunately it's not. So next up is Soulbinds. For Battlegrounds, you will always run Bonesmith from now on. Season 2, you will always run Bonesmith for Battlegrounds. Why? Carver's Eye. This thing is amazing. Anytime you damage an enemy above 90%, you gain a ton of mastery that stacks. Right? This stacks off pets, every enemy. It's amazing. Think about it. 136 mastery, stacking up to 5 times. That's what? 680 mastery. Right now, I have 506 mastery, and it gives me almost 29%. So this is going to be almost 30% mastery, which is just 30% straight damage. It's going to be more than 30% straight damage when it's up. So for your opening burst rotation, 30% straight up damage. That is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. Alright. And then, so no questions asked. Bonesmith is the way to go. 100%. Not even close. Not even close. Just the pure damage value is absurd, and it outweighs anything else you can get from either of these other two Soulbinds. So, the path that we're going to go here is really up to you. These two are similar. I always go for the potency unless I need the big zone, because they both have a defensive option and an offensive option. The difference is that the offensive option is built only against, or the offensive, I'm sorry, for this one is built only against melee and only when you're getting hit, so it loses value. This one just gives you more access to your Fleshcraft, which is great. Makes it, I don't know, 25% shorter cooldown, just because it's not only reducing the cooldown. It doesn't only well, whatever, dude. You get what I'm saying. But anyway, so you go left here, and then this doesn't stack with the DK thing, so you might as well get that extra gold, right? Come down here. You can really go either way here. I like this because it's overall it's more damage, but also the way that our obliteration window works means that this gives me, like, I'm gonna get 10 crits during my oblit window, right? And so this gives me an extra 10-second burst window towards the tail end, from the tail end going into the post oblit or post pillar window. This gives me that little extra kill pressure. So if I don't land kills during my pillar window, I have a little extra momentum to finally get that kill. Like, say I get him super low and I just can't finish him off, this will give me that little extra juice that I need at the end of my pillar window to land that kill. and it gives me a defensive option instead of this kind of useless, stupid option. So it's just the combo is better for me. And then you come down here, Carver's Eye, 100%, always going to take. And the rest is just kind of self-explanatory. So as far as potency conduits are concerned, Accelerated Cold is our single best one because of the reduced cooldown and the tons of haste that it gives us. So you combo this with your pillar, makes your pillar super juicy, and the reduced cooldown gives you more access to it during your pillar windows. And I put it here because I never swap it. These ones, sometimes I swap around between these two. Obviously, I'm not running this right now. Sometimes I'll swap to this if I want the big zone. This one I never swap out, and I always want Accelerated Cold, so I leave it there. Next is pretty much a tie between Remorseless Winter, or the Everfrost one, and Brutal Grasp. I think Everfrost is a little better, especially in Battlegrounds, because I'm more consistently doing lots of damage with Remorseless Winter. Brutal Grasp is really good for really short fights, but in a Battleground situation, you're going to go from fight to fight a lot without your cooldowns always available. And so I stick with Everfrost because it's good damage. They're both comparable damage. I just have this damage more often, and so I like that one. I like Chilled Resilience the most for my Finesse Conduit. Fleeting Wind is also a good one. I would say these two are the top. You really don't need Spirit Drain. You're going to have a lot of RP a lot of times, and so you really don't need Spirit Drain. So pretty much comes down to Fleeting Wind or Chilled Resilience. For Battlegrounds, I always run Chilled Resilience because a 2.5 minute IBF is amazing. And you know, if I get into a fight 30 seconds before my IBF would normally come off cooldown, this could be the difference between living and dying. So I always take that. For Endurance Conduits, Heart and Bones is my favorite. 100%. It's an extra mini wall. You usually are going to use Lichborn defensively anyway, and so this gives you a little extra tankiness during that window. You can stack it on top of IBF to be even tankier when you really need to be. Makes it really good. My next favorite is actually Condensed Animosphere. This is just a little passive healing when you're getting hit. So, you know, you get, say you're not focused, you're not being focused, you just get a couple dot ticks, this heals you up, and now your healer doesn't really have to worry about you as much. You are getting focused, this is almost, you know, every couple of hits, this will heal you back up, makes you a little tankier, a little more difficult to burst you down. So it's just a good all-around talent. Next up really comes down to Insatiable or Reinforced Shell is going to be a personal preference thing. So the problem with Insatiable, this is really good on paper, and Deathstrike was buffed a little bit in PvP going into Season 2, and so Insatiable gains a little value there. But the thing with Insatiable is that it only increases the minimum healing. That means that it only increases the healing that it gives you when you're not being focused. If you're being focused, this does nothing. So it's really a toss-up between the two and what you're going for. Insatiable is going to be good for if you're being rotted and you're trying to keep yourself up to take pressure off your healers. But it's really a preference option. I'm still kind of debating between the two and which one I prefer. I'm currently running Insatiable more, but it's really a toss-up between the two, and it comes down to personal preference. So that does it for that. Next up is our legendary. You are still running Absolute Zero 100% of the time. This is the legendary that makes Frost so good right now, especially in combination with Necrolord, a Bomb Limb, grip everyone in, stun them all, and then your team has 3 seconds of uninterrupted blastage. So you're going to run Absolute Zero 100% of the time. End of story. That's really all it is. If we were looking at Unholy, it might be a different situation with a couple more options, but for Frost, you have Absolute Zero. It's run 100% of the time in arenas, and it's even better in Battlegrounds than it is in arenas because you have that many more people that you can actually catch in the stun. It is amazing. Enough said. And finally, we're going to talk about Trinkets. So you have the new Shadowlands Malediction Trinket, which is so horribly unnecessary because healers are having a hard enough time in this meta right now, and it's hard enough to find healers, so I don't know why they thought they would add this. But I will say in Battlegrounds, I'm not running this. Battlegrounds, I run my 1 minute Trinket. I would either run this or I would run Battlemaster to be a little tankier. But yeah, I'm not running Maledict because it's too long of a cooldown. It's a 3 minute cooldown. It's not available often enough. The 1 minute burst trinket lines up perfectly with pillar, makes your pillar window that much more dangerous. I love it. I would always run the 1 minute on use in Battlegrounds, and there's just too much counterplay for 10 people to stop your Maledict, whether it's from a single dispel, mass dispel from a Shadow Priest, which is a DPS that's already nullifying your shackle. You get CC'd, even a soft CC, like anything. They range it, shadow meld it, whatever. There's just too much counterplay for 10 people to stop your shackle, and then you're out of trinket slot for 3 minutes. And you really shouldn't, with 10 people on your team, you really shouldn't need this to land a kill. Maybe in an RBG when you're coordinating it, especially on a base map when you're trying to steal a base, but you really shouldn't be doing that as a DK anyway, and so I would stick with either Battlemaster or the 1 minute on use. Especially with how hard it is to get crit and haste from gear now, because it's all going into Verse and Mast. Having either the passive trinket or the on use gives us a little extra secondary stats for those, as opposed to just the pure primary stat. So overall, you could run Maledict. I would run the 1 minute or Battlemaster if you want to be tanky, but I feel tanky enough as is. So that's pretty much what it comes down to. Not a lot has changed from last season, except for the Soulbind that we run now, and a couple new PvP talents. But overall, it's pretty similar to how we built ourselves last season. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope to see you around in Battlegrounds this season, and I wish you the best of luck. So thanks for watching, and take care.